Alright, everybody. I am recording this episode just in time for Christmas Eve. And what better category to go with Christmas for my Best of 2022 award than talk about the best horror games of the year? 2022 is once again proof that any developers are keeping horror alive, unalive, undead, however you want to say it. And for my honorable mention this year, it is going to be Stay Out of the House, the actual full non-itch release of the hit game from Puppet Combo. One part ImSim, one part stealth survival horror. There is a lot going on under the hood, but what keeps it from making it to the top 3 for me is that it still feels a little janky in some areas to play. I'm not a fan of games that go for incredible poor lighting or incredible hard to see because of lighting as one of the reasons why you need to have a light source. And the game can be very, and I do mean very, punishing for new players starting out. They have added in an easier mode to play, but this is still a really fantastic concept of this kind of, you versus the antagonist style of horror, as opposed to being like a full-on combat-intensive game, or full-on is entirely stealth and the second you get caught, you're dead. So if you're looking for a horror game that is definitely on the harder of horror, then I would recommend Stay Out of the House. Now, you're probably wondering if there is it could have been a contender award for horror this year, and I'm going to give it to all the indie horror games that I have not played, because for every horror game I play in the indie space, there's a few dozen other ones out there. So for all of you other games that I didn't talk about for this episode, here's your honorary award there. So with that said, let's get to number 3, and that's going to be Nightmare of Decay, a game that features basically a huge love letter to all the horror games that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. This is a first-person survival horror game where you are trapped, in a nightmare, and all kinds of things that will remind you of survival horror past are out to get you. Despite being built around, again, like early survival horror games, it doesn't really feel all that clunky to play. Skilled players can make use of close-range melee to do the ever-popular stab and backstep tactic. The puzzles are on the good side. There's a variety of bosses and enemies to deal with. And again, the game definitely feels more like a collage of survival horror elements, themes, and games, all stitched together to make its own unique aspect. Is it the all-time greatest survival horror game of ever being combined with all that? No. But it is still a very solid and well-executed game. If you're looking for your survival horror to be on the later side, then Nightmare Decay is a really solid game to play. For number 2, it is the long-awaited game that gives everyone, just in time for the holiday season, the gift of Mortis. And that is going to be Faith, the Unholy Trinity. This has been a game that a lot of survival horror fans have been waiting for, combining 8-bit, super low graphically intensive horror with one of the most brilliant uses of a text-to-speech generator that we've seen in a game. This is a title, of course, made up of 3 chapters all put together, and it is once again proof that you don't need 4K graphics, expensive voice acting, and a huge amount of budget on all kinds of fluff to make a really solid horror game. This is one of those games you certainly want to try playing if you can, late at night when no one is around with headphones on. And don't come to me if you have a heart attack from doing that. It is a very great concept for a game, and again, it really embellishes or really makes use of every single aspect and style that the game wants to use. Yes, it's an 8-bit looking game. It looks like something out of like the Atari or NES. But what it does really well is use that aesthetic to kind of go against your conceptions or your assumptions of what this game can and can't do. and there are some beautifully disturbing scenes and cutscenes in this one. And hopefully we can get more Mortis in the future. For number 1, it should come as to no surprise given just how much talk has been surrounding this game and the praise that it's received already, and that is going to be For Signalis. This was a game that once again pays homage to the classic survival horror, this time going for isometric. And what the game does really well is that it presents horror kind of different from a lot of the other indie horror games we've played either this year or in the last few years. It's more existential and cosmic, as opposed to jump scare and in your face. This is a game with a lot of hidden meaning and lore to what is happening in it. It is also a really solid example of how much presentation and aesthetics can add to a game. Much like with Faith, this game features some very stylized cutscenes. It goes for a lot of high concepts in this one. You're not going to be getting jumped by lots and lots of enemies, or the game trying to scare you out of the blue. Instead, it's all about what is happening in this universe. And like all the greats when it comes to sci-fi and horror, it feels like there is a lot more that is happening in this world and in this space that we are not being privy to. There's discussions about how the various characters are being manufactured, just how rotten this empire is, and there are of course multiple endings based on how you play. And it is again really great horror, but not in the kind of, again, scare focus of it. Now, Signalis does have a few annoying aspects to it. It can be a little hard to play given the camera and just trying to sneak around. And it is going to be one of those titles where the inventory is going to be a killer for you, with only having 6 inventory slots, and basically half of that will be taken up by just some basic items. Now, even with that said, if you are looking for a survival horror game that definitely harkens back to the days of the adventure game influence, with a lot of brain teasers and brain melters in terms of puzzles, Signalis will have you covered there. But if you have not played this game yet and you have any interest in the horror genre, or even just really great storytelling and atmosphere in a game, then I highly recommend you check out Signalis. With that said, that is going to do it for Horror of 2022. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do the liking, subscribing, and commenting, and check out our Discord and Patreon. I'll be back for another award category as we continue this Best of 2022 series here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.